I was working the front desk at a ryokan in Kyoto when an American family walked in, rolling their suitcase wheels across the pristine tatami mat flooring. The grandmother gasped so loud I thought someone had collapsed. The mom kept going, confused why everyone was staring. In Japan, you remove your shoes before stepping on tatami. It's woven straw. It's sacred. It's like walking on someone's bed with muddy boots. This is the kind of cultural depth I break down in every episode, because understanding the why behind the custom changes how you see the world. If that's the level of travel insight you want in your feed, you already know what to do. But this family had no idea. They'd walked straight from the street, over the Genkan step that separates outside from inside, right onto the traditional flooring. The grandmother was frantically gesturing at their feet. I had to explain that in most Japanese homes and traditional inns, shoes come off at the entrance. The mom looked horrified. She apologized maybe 15 times. Then she asked if she could keep her socks on because her feet were cold. I said yes. She seemed relieved. But then her husband asked if Crocs counted as indoor shoes. I didn't even know what to say. Another guest told me about a guy in Thailand who got visibly annoyed when a restaurant server didn't come to his table fast enough. He started snapping his fingers. Loud. The kind of snapping you do to get a dog's attention. In Thailand, that's incredibly rude. Most people hear stories like this and laugh at the mistake. My subscribers look deeper. They study the pattern. Because once you see the hidden rules beneath behavior, travel stops being random and starts being decoded. Servers are treated with respect. You make eye contact, raise your hand politely, maybe nod. You don't snap. You definitely don't whistle. The whole restaurant went quiet. The server walked over slowly, smiled, and took his order without saying anything. But the kitchen staff made sure his food came out last. He complained to his friends that Thai service was slow. He had no idea he'd just insulted everyone in the room. My cousin worked at a hotel in Singapore and told me about an American couple who got into an argument in the lobby. Not a quiet disagreement, a full volume, arm-waving, public argument about whether they should go to the zoo or the botanical gardens. In Singapore, raising your voice in public is seen as losing control. It's embarrassing. People don't do it. The couple didn't notice that every other guest had stopped talking and was staring. The front desk staff didn't know whether to intervene or pretend it wasn't happening. Eventually, the husband stormed off toward the elevators, still yelling. The wife sat down in the lobby chair and started crying. A staff member quietly brought her tissues and water. Later, the husband came back and asked why everyone was looking at them like they'd committed a crime. The staff just smiled and said nothing. I heard another story from a friend in South Korea about a guy who sat down on the subway and immediately put his feet up on the seat across from him. Shoes on, full sprawl. In Seoul, subway etiquette is serious. You don't eat, you don't talk loudly. You definitely don't put your dirty shoes on public seating. An older woman sitting nearby said something to him in Korean. He smiled and shrugged like he didn't understand. She repeated it louder. He still smiled. Then she switched to English and told him directly to take his feet down. He looked shocked that she spoke English and said he was just trying to relax. She told him this wasn't his living room. He put his feet down but spent the rest of the ride muttering about how uptight everyone was. I was serving tables at a small family restaurant in Hanoi when an American tourist asked me why there was no menu in English. I explained that we're a local spot, mostly for neighborhood families, and we don't get many tourists. He seemed frustrated. He asked if I spoke English. I said yes, clearly, since we were having this conversation. He asked me to just recommend something simple. I suggested pho. He said he wanted something without weird stuff in it. I asked what he meant. He said no organ meat, no mystery vegetables, nothing too spicy. I brought him a basic chicken pho. When it arrived, he stared at the plate of fresh herbs on the side. Cilantro, Thai basil, lime, bean sprouts. He asked what it was for. I explained you add it yourself to taste. He looked confused and asked why the restaurant didn't just put it in the soup already. I said because everyone likes it different. He shrugged and pushed the plate aside without using any of it. Then he ate the pho with a fork. Not chopsticks, not even the soup spoon, a fork. My manager watched from the kitchen and just shook his head. A coworker told me about an American woman in a Beijing dumpling house who sent her food back because it was too authentic. She'd ordered xiao long bao, the soup dumplings. When they came out steaming in the bamboo basket, she poked one with her fork, and the broth spilled out. She got upset and told the server the dumplings were broken. The server explained that the soup is inside the dumpling. That's the whole point. You're supposed to bite carefully or sip the broth first. She insisted they were defective and asked for a new batch that wasn't leaking. The kitchen remade them. She did the same thing again. The staff didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My friend was working at a street food stall in Bangkok when a guy ordered pad thai and immediately asked for a fork and knife. That's fine. Tourists do that. But then he cut the noodles into tiny pieces with the knife, like he was eating steak. In Thailand, you don't cut noodles. It's bad luck. It symbolizes cutting your life short. The vendor watched in horror as this man methodically chopped every single noodle into bite-sized bits. When he finished eating, he said it was delicious, but complained that the noodles were too long and hard to manage. The vendor just nodded politely and said nothing. I worked at a cafe in Bali and had a customer ask me if the coffee was like Starbucks. I said no. It's traditional Balinese coffee, thick and strong, served with the grounds at the bottom. He ordered it anyway. When it came, he stirred it aggressively with a spoon, mixing all the grounds up into the drink. Then he took a big sip and immediately spit it back into the cup. He said there was dirt in his coffee and demanded a refund. I explained that you're not supposed to stir it. You let the grounds settle. He said that made no sense and that coffee should be drinkable all the way to the bottom. I gave him his money back. He left a 1-star review online saying we served him mud. Another time, an American couple came into a Korean barbecue restaurant in Seoul and got upset that the server was cooking the meat for them. They said they wanted to do it themselves because that's the fun part. The server explained that in this restaurant, staff cook the meat to make sure it's perfect. It's part of the service. The couple insisted they wanted control. The server reluctantly let them. They overcooked every piece, didn't flip it at the right time, and ended up with dry, charred beef. Then they complained to the manager that the meat quality was bad. The manager looked at their grill, covered in burnt edges and uneven cooking, and didn't say a word. He just offered them a discount and walked away. I heard about a woman in Vietnam who refused to eat banh mi from a street cart because it wasn't refrigerated. She lectured the vendor about food safety and said in America, bread is always kept cold. The vendor, who'd been selling banh mi for 30 years, explained that the bread is baked fresh every morning and sold within hours. That's why it tastes good. Refrigerating it makes it stale. She didn't believe him. She went to a convenience store and bought a pre-packaged sandwich instead. Later, she posted online about how disappointing Vietnamese street food was and how she got sick from eating gas station food. People in the comments pointed out the irony. She never replied. My brother worked at a ramen shop in Tokyo and had a customer complain that his ramen was too hot. Not spicy, literally too hot in temperature. He asked if they could cool it down before serving. My brother explained that ramen is meant to be served boiling. That's how the noodles stay firm and the broth stays flavorful. The guy said he didn't want to burn his mouth and asked if they could add ice cubes. My brother thought he was joking. He wasn't. The chef refused. The customer ended up just waiting 20 minutes for it to cool on its own, by which point the noodles were soggy and the broth had a film on top. He ate it anyway and said it was just okay. I was sitting in a quiet train car in Japan, the kind with signs asking passengers to keep noise down and put phones on silent. An American tourist got on, talking loudly on a video call with someone back home. Full speaker mode. The whole car could hear both sides of the conversation. In Japan, talking on the phone on public transit is extremely rude. People were glancing over, visibly uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. Japanese politeness doesn't usually involve direct confrontation. The guy kept going for 3 stops, laughing, talking about his hotel, showing his friend the train through his camera. An older man finally walked over and pointed to the sign asking for silence. The American looked confused and said, "It's just a phone call, man." The older man didn't respond. He just went back to his seat. The American kept talking but lowered his volume slightly. When he got off, I heard him tell his friend that people in Japan were really weird about phones. My cousin was working at a library in Taipei when a group of American students came in to study. They claimed a huge table, spread out all their stuff, and started having a full group discussion. In Taiwan, libraries are sacred quiet zones. Even whispers are kept minimal. These students were talking at normal conversation volume, laughing occasionally, playing music through one of their laptop speakers at low volume. The librarian came over twice to ask them to be quieter. They'd lower their voices for 2 minutes, then go right back up. Other patrons started moving to different floors. Eventually, the librarian asked them to leave. They were shocked. One of them argued that they were studying and had every right to be there. The librarian said yes, but quietly. They packed up, complaining the whole time about how strict everything was. I worked at a park in Singapore where there are strict rules about littering and public behavior. An American jogger finished an energy drink and tossed the can into the bushes instead of walking 10 feet to the trash bin. A park officer saw it happen and immediately issued him a fine, 300 Singapore dollars. The jogger was furious. He said it was just one can and that he'd pick it up. The officer said it was too late. The fine was already written. The jogger argued for 10 minutes, saying that in America, people don't get fined for small mistakes like this. The officer explained that in Singapore, cleanliness is taken seriously. It's the law. The jogger asked if he could just pick it up and forget the whole thing. The officer said no. He paid the fine, but spent the rest of his trip telling people Singapore was a police state. A friend told me about an American couple at a hot spring in Hakone, Japan. Before entering an onsen, you're supposed to wash your entire body thoroughly at the shower stations. It's mandatory. You go in completely clean and naked. No swimsuits. This couple skipped the washing part and walked straight into the communal bath in their swimsuits. Every single person in the bath got out immediately. The attendant had to come in and explain the rules. The couple was embarrassed and said they didn't know. The attendant walked them back out, gave them instructions, and asked them to remove their swimsuits and shower first. They refused to go in naked and just left. Later, they posted a review saying Japanese hot springs were too extreme and not tourist-friendly. My co-worker in Hong Kong told me about an American tourist who walked into a temple wearing a tank top and flip-flops. Temples have dress codes. Shoulders and knees should be covered. It's respectful. The monk at the entrance politely asked him to cover up or come back another time. The guy said he was just there to take pictures and would only be a minute. The monk repeated the request. The tourist got annoyed and said he didn't bring other clothes and that it was too hot outside. The monk offered him a loner shawl to wrap around his shoulders. The guy refused, said it looked ridiculous, and walked out. He complained online that the temple was closed-minded. I was on a bus in Malaysia when an American woman started clipping her nails. Not quietly in her lap. Full clipping session, letting the pieces fly wherever. People around her were visibly disgusted but didn't say anything. One piece landed on the seat next to her. Another hit someone's bag. She didn't seem to notice or care. When she finished, she brushed the clippings off her lap onto the floor and put the clipper back in her purse, like nothing happened. The guy sitting behind her took a photo and posted it in a local group chat. It got hundreds of reactions. People couldn't believe someone would do personal grooming on public. Transit. Another story from a hostel in Chiang's Mai. An American guest was talking on the phone at 2 in the morning in a shared dorm room with 8 beds. People tried to sleep through it, but he was loud. Someone finally asked him to take the call outside. He said he'd be done in a minute. 20 minutes later, he was still talking. Another guest got up and physically handed him his shoes, gesturing toward the door. He got defensive and said he had a right to use the phone. The other guest said not in a shared room at 2 a.m. He left but slammed the door on his way out, waking up everyone who'd managed to fall asleep. I was working at a tea shop in Kyoto when an American customer tried to hand me money with one hand. In Japan, especially in traditional shops, you give and receive money with both hands, or place it in the small tray provided. It's respectful. Handing cash with one hand, especially crumpled bills, is casual and dismissive. I didn't take the money right away. I gestured to the tray. He looked confused and just dropped the bills on the counter next to the tray instead of in it. I picked them up and placed them in the tray myself. He asked why it mattered. I explained briefly. He said that seemed overly complicated for a simple transaction. I didn't argue. I just processed his order and handed him his tea with both hands. He took it with one hand, phone in the other, and walked out. My friend worked at a luxury hotel in Bangkok, where an American guest called the concierge by snapping his fingers and saying, "Hey, buddy." In Thailand, showing respect through polite language and gestures is extremely important, especially toward service workers. The concierge smiled and came over. The guest asked him to book a restaurant reservation, but spoke to him like he was ordering a dog around, pointing, snapping, not making eye contact. The concierge stayed professional the whole time, but later told my friend it was one of the rudest interactions he'd had. The guest never said please or thank you once. A teacher I know in South Korea had an American exchange student who called her by her first name in front of the whole class. In Korea, you never call a teacher by their first name. It's always teacher plus their last name or a formal title. The student thought he was being friendly. The teacher gently corrected him and explained the proper way to address her. He seemed annoyed and said that in America, being on a first-name basis makes things less hierarchical and more equal. She explained that in Korea, respect and hierarchy are part of the culture, especially in educational settings. He reluctantly agreed, but clearly thought it was unnecessary. I heard about an American businessman in Japan who handed his business card to a potential client with one hand, didn't look at it, and immediately shoved the client's card into his pocket without reading it. In Japan, exchanging business cards is a ritual. You present yours with both hands. You receive theirs with both hands. You read it carefully and comment on it respectfully before putting it away properly. This guy did none of that. The meeting was polite but short. They never did business together. He later complained that Japanese business culture was too formal and hard to navigate. Another time, a woman at a family gathering in Taiwan kept insisting on splitting the bill evenly. In Taiwanese culture, especially among older generations, the senior or wealthiest person usually pays for everyone. It's an honor thing. Refusing or insisting on splitting can be seen as insulting their generosity. The host kept saying it was his treat. She kept insisting she wanted to pay her share. It went back and forth for 5 minutes. Finally, the host's wife pulled her aside and explained that letting him pay was the respectful thing to do. She reluctantly agreed, but seemed uncomfortable the whole time. My cousin told me about an American intern in Singapore who showed up to a meeting with the CEO in shorts and a t-shirt. Everyone else was in business formal. The CEO didn't say anything during the meeting, but afterward, the intern's supervisor had to explain that dress code matters in Singapore corporate culture. The intern said he thought startups were supposed to be casual. The supervisor explained this wasn't a Silicon Valley startup. It's a traditional firm with traditional expectations. The intern dressed appropriately after that, but complained to his friends that Singapore was too corporate. I worked at a restaurant in Hong Kong where an American diner tried to tip the server by leaving cash on the table. In Hong Kong, tipping isn't customary. Good service is expected as part of the job. Leaving extra money can actually be confusing or seen as pitying the worker. The server tried to give the money back. The customer insisted she keep it and said she'd earned it. The server explained that they don't accept tips. The customer got frustrated and said she was just trying to be nice. The server thanked her but left the money on the table. The customer walked out confused. Another story from a colleague in Vietnam. An American visitor was at a family dinner and kept trying to serve himself first from the communal dishes. In Vietnamese culture, you wait for elders to serve themselves or be served first. It's basic respect. The grandmother kept gesturing for him to wait, but he didn't understand. He'd already filled his plate. The family didn't make a scene, but they noticed. Later, the host quietly explained the custom to him. He apologized and said he didn't know. The family forgave him, but it was awkward. I heard about an American tourist in Bali who tried to pat a stranger's child on the head. In Bali and much of Southeast Asia, the head is considered the most sacred part of the body. Touching someone's head, especially a child's, without permission is very inappropriate. The mother pulled her child back and gave the tourist a sharp look. The tourist was confused and said she was just being friendly. A local guide nearby explained the cultural reason. The tourist felt awful and apologized repeatedly. The mother accepted but kept her distance the rest of the day. I was wrapping up my shift at a guest house in Luang Prabang when an American couple checked out and asked me if they'd done anything embarrassing during their stay. I appreciated the self-awareness. I told them they were fine, polite, respectful. They seemed relieved. Then the husband laughed and said they'd tried to tip everyone but kept getting refused. I explained that tipping isn't common in Laos. He said he wished someone had told him earlier because he'd spent the whole week trying to force cash into people's hands. His wife added that she'd also been confused about the shoes-off policy and had accidentally walked into 3 different homes with her sandals on before someone finally explained it. They weren't offended. They were embarrassed but curious. That's the difference. Some people get defensive when they make cultural mistakes. Others listen, adjust, and try to understand. Those are the ones who actually enjoy their trip. The truth is, most of these stories aren't about bad people. They're about people who didn't prepare, didn't research, didn't ask questions. Asia has thousands of years of culture, tradition, and social rules that don't match Western norms. And that's okay. But if you're going to visit, especially if you're staying for more than a few days, it's worth learning the basics. Shoes off indoors. Lower your voice in public. Respect hierarchy. Don't assume your way is the default. These aren't unreasonable expectations. They're just different. What surprises me most is how many tourists visit Asia expecting it to adapt to them instead of the other way around. They'll complain about language barriers, even though they're the ones who traveled to a non-English-speaking country. They'll get frustrated by unfamiliar customs, even though they're guests. They'll break social rules and then get upset when locals react. It's like showing up to someone's home and rearranging their furniture without asking. I'm not saying every traveler needs to become an expert in every culture they visit. That's impossible, but a little effort goes a long way. Smile. Observe. Ask politely if you're unsure. Most locals are happy to explain their customs if you approach them with genuine curiosity instead of judgment. The problem starts when people assume their way is the only way, or worse, the right way. That's when the cultural clashes go from funny to frustrating. And trust me, these stories never stop coming. Every week, there's a new one. I track these cultural collisions full-time, so you don't have to. Every week, new stories, new lessons, new ways to understand the world a little better. Subscribing doesn't help me. It helps you not miss the next insight. Someone arguing about chopsticks. Someone confused about public baths. Someone offended by a rule they didn't bother to learn. It's endless, but it's also a reminder that the world is big, diverse, and full of people who do things differently. And that's a good thing. It keeps life interesting. It keeps us humble. It reminds us that we don't know everything. And maybe that's the whole point.